Hello, everybody. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our first expert panel Q&A. My name is Jeff Soriano, and I'm the head of marketing here at YouVisit. And we decided to begin this series because we really started to witness a real sense of community amongst those in higher ed. And we saw an opportunity to further support this community and the camaraderie and really try to highlight some of the thought leaders in this space. We had just under 500 people register, so we're very excited that the community is embracing this. We'll start today with just a little bit of house cleaning before we dive into this and give you a little bit of an agenda. So this session is being recorded, so if any of you guys have to jump off for any reason, don't worry. We'll be sharing an on-demand version early next week. And we'll give you a little bit of an introduction into YouVisit, and again, provide some more details into who we are. We'll then dive into our panel Q&A with our experts, and then we're going to round out the session with an audience Q&A. So if you guys have questions along the way, you'll see that in the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a place that you can actually put in questions. We would love to get your questions, and we will answer as many as we can during our time slot. We'd like to be respectful of your time, so we are going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. Thank you, guys. And again, if you have any questions or you need to get in touch with us, use the GoToWebinar control panel. So today, we're talking about the role of content in recruitment. And there was a recent study that came out, and it reported that 7 out of 10 students indicate that they're going to watch videos from an institution, and they name that content that's published and promoted by the institution, specifically on their EDU site, as being the most trusted source of information for them. But what we've kind of seen is over the years, people have started to have some new expectations of what content will do, and this traditional content or these traditional media types, they're actually starting to fall flat in their ability to tell an institution's story, to demonstrate your culture and really help you differentiate. And I think that you would all agree that in today's competitive market, that's no longer really a nice to have. It's actually becoming critical. So what YouVisit did is we built a platform that delivers virtual experiences, and they empower storytelling and encourage the audience to interact with the media, not just passively consume it. This participation ultimately is what leads to that higher level of engagement and facilitates information collection about your audiences, supporting your recruitment goals. And as I mentioned today, that's more than just a nice to have, it's becoming critical. And this is all possible by us essentially weaving 6 different media types into a new kind of super media type. So that's panoramic photos, videos, 360 photos and videos. And again, we weave them all together into this kind of super asset that really allows you to bring your campus to life. And visitors of an immersive experience, well, they're given the ability to choose which destinations from your institution that they want to visit. This is giving them the ability to learn more about what's really interesting to them. And this becomes a non-linear storytelling mechanism, and more of almost like a choose your adventure, which is really aligned to the expectations of Generation Z. By integrating these multimedia types into a single destination, someone could do more than just look inside the entryway of an athletic center. They can actually experience what it's like to be a student at the game and witness that last second buzzer beater. And what's great about this is that these powerful experiences are evoking emotions that are driving potential students to the next step of their journey in your recruitment process. And the ability to give them those clear calls to action that support their next steps from in that actual experience in a single destination, that's going to greatly increase both the user experience and the conversions. But ultimately, none of this really matters if it doesn't deliver results, and luckily it does. Institutions that have embraced this new super content are really seeing great results. And these results are empowering them to not only hit recruitment goals, but to see a true ROI on their budget. And, it's really something that we're seeing is aligning with the new challenges that exist today. And so I did want to take this time to just provide you guys some context around YouVisit itself, what we're doing, and again, why this topic around content is so important to us. Now, there's a lot of challenges that exist today that are transforming how professionals in higher ed like yourself are approaching recruitment. And this is why we're excited about this panel, and specifically why we're excited about the next part of today's agenda, which is our expert panel. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Luke and Stefan, for participating today. Not only did these guys agree to participate in the panel, they were actually really critical in defining the theme of what we were going to talk about today. And again, I would like to thank these guys, and maybe we can start by having you introduce yourselves and give us a little bit more information about yourself. So maybe, Luke, you can start by just giving us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome, yeah, definitely. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name's Luke Fagello, and I work in the marketing department as the Director of New Media Communication here at Juniata College, which is located in beautiful Huntington, Pennsylvania. So in my role at Juniata, I work to tell the story of the college through video, other forms of media, things like virtual and augmented reality, live streaming, virtual tour solutions, and more. So I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to share how our marketing team here at Juniata has shaped our content strategy to keep up with Gen Z. So at the end of today's webinar, if there's anything that I talk about, content that I talk about, ideas that I share, feel free to reach out to me individually, and I'd be happy to talk with you.
Awesome, Luke, and that's a great point. I can definitely provide people with contact information if you guys are okay with that.
Yep.
Awesome. Oh, Stefan, why don't you give us a little introduction to yourself, your role, and what you're focused on?
Great. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to YouVisit for coordinating this webinar. My name is Stefan Hyman, and I'm Assistant Provost of Enrollment Strategies, Communications, and Analytics at Stony Brook University on Long Island in New York. Stony Brook's a large public university within the SUNY system, and we educate more than 26,000 students, and we're actually at our record enrollment level right now. I've worked at Stony Brook for 17 years, starting off in graduate admissions and then moving to the undergraduate sector about 13 years ago. And I've been in my current role in enrollment management now for about 5 years and have a dual focus on recruitment and admissions and also retention and student success. So I'm really thinking about the full enrollment life cycle, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with everyone today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Really, again, appreciate you not only participating in the panel itself, but as well giving us the guidance around what would really be the most impactful topic for today. So thank you. So let's get started. I showed you a slide before, and it had some of the challenges that we've seen and we've identified in some of our research. But I'd really like to hear from you guys specifically on what you think has changed the most in student recruitment, in the last couple of years. So, Stefan, why don't we start with you and get your thoughts on that?
Sure. So a few things come to mind immediately from an admissions perspective. I think of recruiting now as an always-on process, not just centered around peak times of the year. And I think this stems in part from how students are interacting with technology in other areas of their lives and its impact on their mindset and expectations. And that word mindset is something I'm going to come back to hopefully a lot today, because I think it really helps inform how we develop content. We're seeing more and more universities engaging not only in social media platforms, but mobile apps, chatbots, video streaming services, and tools that allow students to learn about a college on their own terms and timelines. A lot of changes are being driven by the fact that the student pool is decreasing nationally, especially in certain regions of the country like the Northeast, and that's driving up competition. So what are some of the ramifications of that? First, it's prompting many colleges to engage students earlier to drive awareness and attract them. And at Stony Brook, some of our most successful recruitment programs are geared towards high school sophomores because we're reaching them long before they're on the mailing list of dozens of other colleges and feeling like they're being bombarded. Second, we're using a much larger amount of data to map out recruitment opportunities, both in terms of geography and also in terms of ROI and effectiveness. And that's where I think a really effective tracking mechanism with a CRM is just really a must today. And just to add on to that, because so many of us are facing smaller budgets and having to make those dollars go further, there's even more motivation to be really data-driven and informed. And finally, I mean, while today's webinar is really focused around Generation Z, many colleges are expanding beyond the traditionally aged, soon-to-be high school graduate and building around transfer students, adult learners, online education. And there's some overlap, I think, with content that we use for these groups. I think they're all still concerned with issues like affordability, the college meeting their aspirations, being part of a community. But they also have a different set of concerns, and they're going to require a different set of resources to be successful.
That's really interesting. Again, you talked a little bit about the concept of starting to recruit younger, potentially going further outside of the geography than you used to, as well as, the concept of, non-traditional students and looking at that. Luke, how are you guys? Are you seeing some of those same challenges? Are you seeing additional ones? Would love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, definitely. So I come at this from a little bit different perspective, since I work in the marketing department and create content for the admissions staff to use for recruitment. So for me, coming from the marketing department, recruitment has changed drastically. And it's not as a result of the college wanting to change any of its methods. It's more so a result of changes in how students communicate. So we can think of things like social media, texting, FaceTime. So we as marketers, we have to meet them where they are and also personalize their admissions experience. And that's a big piece, is personalizing their admissions experience. So in terms of that, there's a greater demand for diving in deeper into specific messaging. There's a need to build out these buyer personas for both prospective students and also their parents, and then creating the specific messages tailored to each buyer persona. So the increase in competition has certainly made our job tougher as marketers and enrollment staff.
So you raised a point there where you started to talk about personalization, personas, and getting a little bit deeper into that. Is that related to, or have you actually seen that the expectations of the students have changed? And as you kind of go into these, again, some of these challenges around additional geographies and non-traditional learners and focusing on transfers, Luke, maybe you want to answer that and dive a little bit deeper and talk about some of those expectations that have changed. Be curious to understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of students' expectations changing, students really want to learn at their own pace and on their own terms. But with that, there's this fine line you have to walk as a marketer and more so as an admissions counselor. You want to be hands-on with prospective students, ensuring that they're getting the information that they want and that they need. But you get to a point where texting them too much or placing a Facebook ad in front of them too many times, it can seem desperate. And so it's an incredibly tough line, tough to figure out that happy medium. Another thing is the form of media that they want to see. They're really drawn to visual content, prospective students today. So their preferred media type is definitely, it's all about experiencing. Students today, they want to know more than the basics. At first, they may simply want to know, where are you located? Do you have my major? And how much do you cost? But beyond that, it lies in this idea that students and their parents, they want to make sure that they'll fit into your campus and its culture. And so the best way to do that, in my opinion, is through, of course, from the guy that does all the video, is through video and other new media, things like 360 video, virtual reality, virtual tours. So creating a more immersive experience and more immersive content that really helps prospective students see themselves at your college. It's more important than ever.
That's really interesting, this concept of them seeing themselves at the campus, and you said more than basics. Stefan, it'd be great, to get your perspective on it and see whether you're seeing alignment on that, or if there's additional expectations that you think, with your role being more on the enrollments and admission side, that you're seeing as it relates to those new expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Luke brings up some excellent points. I think what's key to understanding expectations of Generation Z is, again, thinking about that word mindset and some of the factors that might be contributing to it. So we're generally talking about students born since 1997. They've had various forms of technology, smartphones, social networks, maybe more recently AI like Siri and Alexa, around them for their entire lives to different extents. There's still a digital divide out there, but it manifests, I think, differently than it did 25 years ago. Those technologies offer incredible access to information very quickly, and they spend a whole lot of time on them. And so we've always competed with other colleges for the attention of students, but now we're also competing with everything on their Facebook and Instagram feeds to get their attention. So we need to develop, whether it's videos, images, posts, that stand out in some way. A second factor is that while this group is still pretty young, I think they're old enough to remember the economic recession of 2008. They may have experienced a parent losing a job. They may have an older sibling, a millennial who's struggling to find work right out of college, and that older sibling may already be on their third or fourth job because longevity in the workplace is less common these days. So I see students behaving more and more like informed consumers, and I think this touches on something Luke just mentioned. When meeting with these students, we tend to see requests for very detailed information, much more so than previous years. They don't just ask us about graduation rates anymore at an institutional level. They ask us about the graduation rate and the job placement rates and the majors they want to pursue. They ask us about the average amount of debt our graduates are accruing, average salary information. So just a really informed consumer. The third factor, I think, surrounds their engagement. And here I see real extremes. On the one hand, we hear all the time, and I think many of us in the admissions world who host visit programs and are speaking with these students, we see all the time. On the surface, this group seems to have a short attention span, and they can seem easily distracted. And then on the flip side, we've seen just how engaged and passionate Gen Z can be on global issues that matter to them and how effectively they can mobilize around those issues. So I think our key challenge is developing content that captures their attention so we can channel those passions in very productive ways.
So that's really interesting from the perspective of positioning them as consumers and very, very educated consumers. And you mentioned, capturing their attention. There was talk about channels like Facebook and how you're engaging these people. So, as a marketer myself and kind of seeing how the competitive landscape just continues to get just that more competitive, curious how you guys are seeing the importance of top of the funnel programs, and has the importance of top of funnel programs really started to increase because of this shifting to a younger generation or increased competition? And maybe Stefan, you just want to keep going and elaborate on some of that.
Sure, definitely. So in terms of top of the funnel, I think driving awareness has never been more important and also never been more challenging because of that level of competition and all the noise that's out there. For me, what's key is balancing and aligning our physical and our virtual recruitment programs. It's still very important for us to have a strong physical presence in high schools and at college fairs. Those help us build long-term pipelines and relationships with college counselors. But many of our newer efforts have been geared towards reaching the secret shoppers on our website and engaging students through the wide and ever-growing network of college search websites and portals, and then using content on social media for that multimodal touch. I think with the college search websites in particular, that's one of those challenges that's out there because it's hard to be everywhere. There are a lot of search portals that seem to pop up every day. There's a new one. And trying to figure out where you can get the best bang for your buck, since you really can't be everywhere at once. Regarding content, on the one hand, every school is great in its own way and has great stories to tell about its students and its alumni. And on the other hand, we have to communicate these in ways that'll help us stand out from the crowd. So how do we do that without a huge budget for a new study on branding? I think what's key is making sure that there's a really strong functional relationship between admissions and marketing, so you can leverage each other's talents and experiences. The marketing area is typically asked with building out a college's brand, but that needs to be done with insights from people on the ground who are meeting with prospective students on a daily basis. And something that we've done specifically at Stony Brook, which I think has been really successful, has been a collaboration with our marketing department where we'll actually host focus groups in the high schools. And it's really a great opportunity for them to hear from the students themselves. And then just one last point, while top of the funnel efforts are critical, I'd say we put an equal, if not enhanced amount of efforts recently into building out our communication plans for students going deeper into the funnel. Some reasons for that: since the intro of the Common Application, students have applied to many more colleges, and as apps increase and the overall student population decreases, it can become very challenging for a college to know which students have genuine interest. So we run separate communications for our stealth applicants after they apply, since they've never had the opportunity to hear from us in a formal way previously, and we really don't know how much they know about Stony Brook. And one of our key call to actions that we actually use here is a virtual tour, which tends to generate a lot of engagement. We've also done a lot of work on our admitted student communications with the goal of increasing yield. And those tactics range from improving our email campaigns to hosting live video webinars, a private social network for admitted students where they can chat with other students, and pushing out some of our YouVisit content more actively.
That's interesting, and again, I think that there's a lot that I got from that around the kind of connection between the top of the funnel and its value, and then driving folks further down the funnel. I guess, Luke, from same kind of question, has the importance for top of funnel programs really increased for you guys? And are you seeing the similar things on your side from the marketing perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stefan made some great points. Every school is great in its own way, and so the top of the funnel content really needs to demonstrate that what is specifically unique and great about your institution, so that you can connect with the right students. So with competition stiffening, you have to know and share what is unique about your institution. So at Juniata College, we identified 4 key messages that can really serve as conversation starters and jumping off points when we talk to prospective students. These 4 messages, they were integrated into across campus, so into our campus tours, our enrollment publications, prospective student microsite, and even our faculty and staff were trained and instructed on how to communicate those 4 messages. So whenever a prospective student asks what's unique about Juniata to a tour guide or an enrollment counselor on the road, or even a faculty member while a prospective student sitting in a class, that prospective student will receive the same message. And so then also want to talk about, going off Stefan's point about the Common App and students applying to more institutions. We also recognize this trend of students not visiting your institution until after they've been accepted. So they're applying to your institution way before even stepping on your campus, which presents a pretty unique challenge. Because of all this, Stefan makes a great point that you have to be aware of so many different channels of information, and essentially try your best to be everywhere. You can't be everywhere, but you have to figure out where you get that most bang for your buck to do that.
So that's really interesting, right? So obviously talking about the Common App and its impact, as well as people applying to more institutions and potentially not even physically visiting until after they have been accepted. How has that kind of impacted your strategy and how you're thinking about the role of content? And I'll kind of toss this one up there. Does anybody want to tackle that first?
Yeah, sure. This is Luke. So I've mentioned a little bit about how our recruitment strategy has changed from a marketing perspective, but just to reiterate, our marketing strategy has changed drastically over the last couple of years. It all started with building out these buyer personas, these semi-fictional representation of prospective students based on market research that we did, as well as real data about our current students. And so after we built out these buyer personas, we begin creating content that relates to those personas, and we never stop creating the content all year long, pretty much. In terms of the content we create, we have also emphasized telling the story of the students or the alums rather than talking specifically about our institution. So what does that look like? Well, rather than saying Juniata produced X number of Fulbright scholars this year, we produce content about each of the individual Fulbright winners. So who they are, their journey to Juniata, and ultimately how Juniata has helped direct their path. We then adjust and edit that content to fit a variety of channels: social media, web, video. And so that makes the content more relatable, more attractive to prospective students. It's much less of a selling Juniata to them.
That's super interesting. So you've gone and kind of updated the content approach in many cases to, where it might have been really about the institution, you're focusing on the people. And in doing so, those people are kind of telling the story. Stefan, as you guys kind of look at your content and how this has updated your strategy, Are you seeing something similar as it relates to what the content's highlighting, or what the role of the content is in this process?
Yeah, definitely. I'm in complete agreement with Luke. I mean, a lot of our content now is really geared towards trying to make that emotional connection with students, and there are a lot of different ways of doing that, but leveraging your current students, your alumni, leveraging user-generated content, I think lends great credibility. Perhaps at no other time is the concept of authenticity more important. We see this play out in many other industries like politics, for example. Every day we wake up to headlines about fake news, and everywhere on the internet is clickbait. We know that trust in media is down, which means we have these additional obstacles to not just get seen, but to be believed. So we need to tell great stories, but also to make sure those stories match the realities of our institutions, because if they don't, I think students can see right through them. And that's where having those stories focused around our successful students, our successful alumni, often in their own words, really adds that credibility.
That's really a great point. I think the authenticity around it, people can kind of sniff it out, right? When you're trying to be authentic, but you're not. So having the content be able to really be authentic is not easy, but is something you really have to focus on. And if we talk about this new kind of the role of the content, and ultimately the goal of the content being focused on making that connection, the question that we always get is, well, how are you ultimately measuring this, and what are you applying as kind of your success metrics? So Stefan, thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the general goal of content in the admissions world is to help educate a student so they can determine if they're a good fit for your campus, but also to help them move from one stage of the funnel to the next. In terms of measuring success, wherever possible, I try to tie all campaigns back to actions, whether they be micro conversions like campus visits, info requests, creating some type of a customized website or viewbook, or those macro conversions, applying or enrolling. Depending on where that content is living and what kind of ad or campaign you're running, that's not always easily feasible, which is where I think the analytics can come in pretty handy. There are tools like vanity URLs, tracking a website's traffic after a mailing for print, using UTM codes on a landing page to get a sense of how effective your different ad campaigns can be. These can really give you a good sense of engagement and help you to estimate impact. We also like to talk to students, as I mentioned before, in focus groups, understand how they're engaging with our content, see them how they click literally right there on the spot in a computer lab. So what do we know about what works? For us, physical visits are still the highest converting activities, but in particular, Luke touched on this earlier, that ability to customize those experiences, and for us, customize visit opportunities, we get an even higher yield and a higher conversion rate from that. If the students are sitting in on classes, if they're meeting with faculty and other students, the outcomes are even better than a more generic campus tour. But we're also serving many demographics of students who can't visit because of location or financial restrictions, and we know that these cohorts tend to be more reliant on a virtual presence. And that's where, I think we put a lot of focus in recent years on our virtual tour. We try to refresh the content and images every year. Our script was actually written with heavy input from current student tour guides. So we're trying to share our university story the way that they would be telling their story to prospective students in real life.
That's fantastic. And I think, the concept of the micro conversions is really important, right? Like, you got to kind of look at what the leading indicators are that are ultimately going to support those lagging indicators, which are getting the students to come to school. So great. Luke, any additional thoughts as it relates to, maybe that goal of the content and how you're measuring its success?
Yeah, I mean, I think Stefan hit the nail on the head. We constantly try to attach some sort of call to action to each piece of content. Generally speaking, it's, learn more, visit, or apply, but we often try to dig deeper and ask them to do things like fill out a Common App by March 15th. In addition, members of our team, we have analytics meetings where we discuss content that's been created in the last few weeks and any key analytics that really jump out to them and may point to success or failure or reason to update or fix.
Great. Guys, I want to be respectful of time, and I did want to get to a couple of audience questions that came in. So if you don't mind, we're just gonna switch gears right now. And, again, I wanna be respectful of time, so we'll maybe get to 2 questions. And if there are additional ones we can answer later, we'll try to answer them via email. So first question that came in, and this was related to something that you guys talked about in the beginning as it relates to recruiting people younger and younger. There was a question around, like, how does the recruitment content change or differ for a younger student versus someone who is closer to an application age? And again, maybe Luke, you want to take this first one?
Sure. I mean, I would say that I think we would be communicating with them more from the top of the funnel, I guess, with those younger students, trying to get their general interest, because yeah, everyone is recruiting younger and younger. And so sophomore in high school getting how many emails, how many publications or postcards in the mail, but we're probably starting top level with the younger and then digging in deeper and deeper as they progress.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with that kind of extended cycle of getting somebody from being a potential person to apply all the way to a student, there's a lot more touch points, which kind of leads to the second question, which will probably, folks, be our last one just due to time. Stefan, as you guys think about this, are you investing more in some of these digital tactics over traditional tactics because of that extended period?
We're doing it for, so the first answer is yes, but we're doing it for any number of reasons. State funding in higher education is not what it once was, and that's something I think many state universities are feeling the pain with. But it's also a good opportunity for us to take a look at what's working, what do we know is working, and how can we be sure that it's actually working. And so, when it comes to some of our print publications, for example, we actually this year stopped printing a view book. First time in university history, no view book. We have an electronic version of a view book, which allows the students to customize their own preferences, and that's something that we email out to them and that we promote when we're on the ground at different college fairs. So I would say yes, and then also we're trying to, again, align some of what we're doing digitally with some of our other, I'd say, more traditional tactics. So we still use student search programs where we're reaching out to students who are qualified based on College Board ACT data, but we're trying to combine those more traditional ways of reaching out to them, email, maybe some letters, with outreach on digital channels. And that's actually where we're seeing some really good momentum right now.
Awesome. Well, guys, I again want to be respectful of everybody's time. And so Luke, Stefan, thank you so very much. And thank you to all of the folks who registered and attended our first expert series Q&A. This is going to be an ongoing thing, so keep your eyes open for more of these. And if you'd like more information about YouVisit, you can always visit us online. And again, thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Luke.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.